This is the DeFi Decoded podcast by 9 Point Partners in cooperation with Prophecy DeFi. The ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast should not be taken as investment advice. Always consult with your financial advisor before investing.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the DeFi Decoded podcast. I'm Alex Tapscott, here with Andrew Young. Hollywood screenwriter Jesse Nickson-Lopez has brought some of modern TV's most indelible characters to life. As a founding member of the writing team on Stranger Things, she developed the storyline for the character Eleven and has written for The Outsiders, Narcos Mexico, and other hit shows. In 2022, Apple greenlit Nickson-Lopez's show Lucia, which will be directed by Damian Chazelle, the Academy Award-winning director of La Land and Whiplash, with Nickson-Lopez as showrunner. At 35 years old, she's established herself in the Hollywood firmament, but it turns out that being a successful screenwriter is just her day job. She recently revealed her true passion to us as the co-founder of Web3 startup MV3, which at the intersection of storytelling and technology, I think promises to kind of disrupt TV, film, and maybe even the Hollywood business model as we know it. Jesse, we're really excited to have you, as well as your co-founder, Torey Kohara, who's someone I've known for 20 years, dating back to high school, on the show. And I should add, I think also that as co-founders, you're also a husband and wife duo. Is that right?
That is right. We never stop working. It's pretty much a 26-hour-a-day gig over here.
So Jesse, can you tell us how a Hollywood screenwriter becomes a Web3 entrepreneur?
Sure. I thought it was a pretty organic path, and I think eventually when more screenwriters realize how much fun I'm having, they will come this way too. But my brother, Roberto, who is our third co-founder, he started this Instagram account called The Metaverse. It's Instagram.com/metaverse with a 3 instead of the second E, I think that's right. And he was one of the first people who'd ever talked to me about Web3 and NFTs. And I dived into the space and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with this idea of digital collectibles and how they could unlock more of an experience for audiences who are interested in God, I hate the word content, but I have to use it just in content as a storyteller. So that was how I dipped my toe into it. And I became like an avid degen. I was supposed to be running a room and I was like buying NFTs and trading like crazy and playing all sorts of weird games where I'd like send my nights out on journeys. And I became a total degen before we founded our own collection. And that was the beginning of my journey.
And so when did you decide that you wanted to make the leap from degen to entrepreneur? Because a lot of people love NFTs and tokens and so forth, but not everybody decides to, start something of their own.
I just saw the potential. I would look at all of these collections and they were really beautiful images. And I just, people kept talking about characters and storytelling and wanting to be the next Marvel. And as a screenwriter, I'd actually been approached by various Web3 companies. And I was like, I wouldn't know how to work backwards and take these images, which are all very similar to one another, and figure out who these characters are and who this world is. It just didn't make any sense to me. And so I was like, I know how to do what I do, which is create characters and create worlds. I could start there. And from there, it just seemed to make so much more sense to start a collection based on a story rather than try and build a collection and then create the story afterwards. So I reached out to my longtime agents at UTA to be like, what do you guys know about Web3 and NFTs? And they were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. And then
When was that? Out of curiosity. When was that?
That was probably last October. And so it was during the bull run, and it was like people were very excited about NFTs and Web3. I think it's just the traditional film and television people weren't quite there yet. And then I had a conversation with my brother about it, and he was like, that's so funny. I've been really wanting to start my own collection. And he and I started spitballing and like very quickly afterwards, I got off the phone with him and I just started writing, and I came up with like the whole treatment for Luna City and the characters, Cosima and Eli, and it all just sort of came to me. It felt very, very clear. I call it a gift from the universe. And from there, we just started moving quite quickly. We convinced Torey to come on board with us full time. And we found an artist that we loved. We decided on the direction, and I just started building out all the different parts of a Luna City. And it was so much fun. Like, as a screenwriter, I think I told you with Lucia, it's been a 4-year process of me like sitting in a little cave writing stories. And with MV3, I would, talk to our artist and we would discuss the character. And then the next day he would be sending me images and comps. And so that was really exciting for me, where I'm like, oh, this happened so quickly. I wasn't used to that. And then from there, we built a community around it.
Yeah. A lot of other NFT projects that people might be familiar with, things like, say, Bored Ape Yacht Club, are basically thousands of versions of the same image. And they are now trying to use that as the basis to develop lots of different things around the community, whether it's, exclusive events or other sort of, token gated things, but also stories, right? Like, for example, Seth Green, I think, has a Bored Ape called Mr. Cheese, which was stolen, but he was able to get it back, paid a ransom, I think, of $297,000, and is now trying to adapt that for film or TV. But it just seems like, the thing never started as a story. So it almost feels like they're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, so to speak. Like, they're just trying to take something that wasn't ever intended to be part of a story and making a story around it. And it seems like you're taking a different approach. Can you talk about like your evolution in thinking, looking at like what was out there and how you wanted to do it differently with MV3? And then just tell us about Luna City. Like, I think people would love to know the story.
Sure. What a lot of people don't realize is that, and I say this as a screenwriter, so take it with a grain of salt, but the true gatekeepers in Hollywood are screenwriters and directors. Like, you have a piece of IP, great IP, you want to develop it. You can't develop it until a writer says, yes, I love this and I care about this enough that I'm going to spend the next year or 2 years of my life working on this, and I get sent IP all day, right? I get sent obviously books and comic books, but also in the last couple of years, I've been sent Reddit short stories and a lot of news articles and, strange games and mobile games. And like, everybody's trying to turn everything into IP. And it's really, really hard to do. I mean, it's what my everyday job is like, if you get a picture of an ape, I'm sure there are writers who could do that job. I couldn't. I wouldn't have no idea where to start. And because I've so deeply believed in the power of NFTs, it just made more sense to me to create these characters. And, I grew up as a gamer. I deeply understand the idea of factions and allegiance and how community can build around that. And so I took all the different facets of my mind, which come from a background of writing television and also a background of gaming and my NFT geeky profoundness. And from there, I created the story of a Luna City. It's also, I designed it in mind, knowing that our plans were not just to create a film or a television series, but also be able to expand into gaming, comic books. And so I all of that I designed it into the storytelling structure. And when we were designing traits in an NFTs, everybody talks about what the traits are. The artist and Torey and Roberto and I, we talked at length about what each trait was, how that would play into the story, how, when you are, as the story continues to progress, you are like, oh, I have this gun, this plays a role in it. Every single thing that we do is in service of the story. A Luna City is a dystopian, futuristic tech society. It was very much based on again, we talked about this earlier, the living in this strange time of American politics and the really intense divisions, and especially recently, all the this it feels like we're living in a weird technology state. Like, I mean, you constantly feel spied on, nothing feels safe. And I built all of that into this tech world. The most recent iteration of it is it's a world run by this megalomaniac tech entrepreneur called Eli Trust, who developed a Android technology, artificial intelligence learning, which caused a lot of havoc in Luna City. And the city has shut down from the rest of the United States, and they are at war between multiple factions as they try and figure out how this city should be governed.
And so the project itself is a collection of NFTs, right, that anybody can purchase. And these NFTs are characters in the story. How does that work?
There are the core characters. There's 15 of them. And those are the named characters that'll actually appear in there. Like, we held the IP rights back for those characters, and those are the ones that will appear in all the iterations of the storytelling. Eli, Cosima, Sutra, The Wiz, who is one of our favorites, Rose, and the rest of the characters which were generated are based on the different factions. So there's empaths and elites for humans. There's the AX, which is an android faction, the RQ, which is the more gargantuan robot faction. And then there are the travelers, which are an alien faction, which mess up and twist the story in various different ways. And from there are sort of mini factions within each group. What the other thing that we've done, that we really have like 3 facets to MV3. And within the digital collectibles, which are the NFTs that you can purchase, what has been really fun is to see Luna really organically become a co-created universe where people take their characters. And I urge you guys who own characters to go to mv3.io and do this. And they name their characters. They start building the stories around their own characters. And it's been really fun to see this community become writers and creatives who are saying, this is who my character is. She is, the Onyx princess. This is who her backstory is. This is what she wants to do in Luna. This is where she works. And in that way, I'm like, oh, wow, this is such a cool way to grow a universe where I'm not doing all of the work. I am building on these 16 characters that are going to appear in my version of the story, but everybody else is building on their characters as well.
Yeah. So you go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's so it's really interesting because it's almost like an open source movement but instead of creating software, kind of how I'm used to in the DeFi world, it's creating content and IP. And
that's exactly right.
Yeah, it's a really, really interesting concept. And because when I was going through it, I was thinking a little bit, it made me think of Stoner Cats. I'm not sure if you guys are sort of aware of Stoner Cats.
That's the project?
Sorry?
The Mila Kunis project, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so they sold NFTs to essentially fund a show, but the show, all the content is being created by sort of the core team itself. Whereas I feel like you guys are taking a more decentralized approach. I'm just kind of curious, what do you think, what do you think of the approach of just having the core team do sort of the work, at least at the start, to get some initial IP and content out versus the more decentralized approach that you're taking? What do you think sort of the strengths and advantages of your approach versus, I guess, the Stoner Cat model?
Well, tell us a bit more about your approach too, because sure. I think, yeah, like it seems like it's a synthesis of sorts between, yes, community approach, but also there's clearly some stewardship, right, that's happening from you and the team.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And 2 things are happening. I'm developing the show the way that I would develop anything, right? I'm thinking of highest quality, who are the best buyers, who's the best cast, how. And that's one part of it. And the reason that we're building it this way is because, Torey, what was the statistic Roberto put out yesterday? It's like, I think confidence in the crypto space is at 7% or something right now. It's, trust is so low in the NFT and Web3 space that it feels like in order to really grow past past and bring, not just grow past, but bring people into our world, that we need to find something more familiar. So in developing a show and allowing it to be something that a wider audience goes, I know what this is, I know how to enjoy it. That's one thing. But the sandbox, the arena of a Luna City, these characters, that's building, we're building that almost separately. It's like imagine if the first Star Wars film came out and you could watch that, but in the background you owned stormtroopers, right? It's like so it's like people are building out the characters at the same time, and that part of it is decentralized. That IP belongs to them. The world of a Luna City is sort of like a free-for-all. It belongs to everybody, and we're hoping, we don't know if it's going to work, it's like this is a new idea, so we're sort of pushing it forward, but we're hoping that people build alongside with it. We have this creative guild, and I'm like, the coolest thing ever would be if like the first comic book that came out of a Luna City wasn't mine, right? And it was somebody else who had developed their character and taken the sandbox and pushed it forward in their own direction, which I know our holders are trying to do.
Yeah, it's really interesting the way in which this fits into the Web3 narrative, right? So Web3 is the idea that we've got this read, write, own web, that users of products and services online can also be owners, and that ownership in and of itself is part of the experience of using something, right? And this has found early success in DeFi, and it's a thing that like our listeners have heard us talk about, how if you're early into something like Uniswap providing liquidity, you can earn the native token uni, because what you're doing is helping to bootstrap that network. The more liquidity, the more useful it is, and you become an owner. And this is a similar kind of thing where from the outset people can be owners by buying into these buying into the story, right? You have to it's token gated in the sense that you have to first buy in, but then you can actually help contribute as an owner to increasing the value of the network as a whole. Now, it's like to Andrew's point, instead of open source software, you're basically open sourcing story. That makes for some interesting dynamics, because not everyone's a storyteller, and certainly not a Hollywood screenwriter. So you've got to figure out how and when, I guess, to integrate the input. And I'm wondering what the process is for that. And then separately, you've already decided from the outset that there will be core main characters and then a supporting cast. But it almost feels like people can, liquidity mine their way into becoming a main character by like contributing story to their bit players. and that's a way to like unlock value. I mean, is that a way to think about it? That's a multifaceted question, but I'm just
curious.
Curious.
No, you hit on a lot of things that are completely true. In terms of the community and how we're helping people tell their stories, yes, not everybody's a storyteller, but what I have been surprised by is actually I kind of think everybody is a storyteller. Everybody has, I've been surprised at some of our holders. We have, doctors, surgeons, teachers, like all of these people who are coming in and they are building stories around their characters. One of the ways that we've been helping do that is almost like I sometimes feel like the dungeon master, where I put prompts out and like in that way, it's like also like creative writing class where people are like, oh, you're giving us a thread to follow. You're giving us, places and locations and events that are occurring. And so now we're just finishing off where you left off. And I think that's been helpful. We also have a lecture series. It's like, when you become one of our holders, if you're interested in building out your character, we are building out the infrastructure so that you can learn to do it, which has been really fun and exciting and cool. We also have a creative guild, and that's something that we want to continue to implement in 2023 and beyond, where part of our hope and ambition is to be able to fund some of these community-based projects and what they want to do with it, whether it's, novellas or podcasts or short film. We want to be able to really nurture our community to build out their own content. And then, the other piece of it is you're absolutely right. Like, I think the first, let's call it the first film or the first season, will probably be these 16 characters, which will establish, the lore and the story. And in that sense, like, I feel pretty strongly that you do want a professional writing team pushing that forward just for, you know, the highest probability and the highest chances. But that is not to say that there aren't characters that we will bring up. That's very much something that I'm hoping to do, that in like sequels or subsequent seasons, we won't all of a sudden take like a few of the characters who have been growing within the MV3 population and say, hey, can we, you know, do you want to join us in this? Or can we license your character for this story? You know, that's the dream. If we're able to do that, then we're really doing something right.
Totally. Andrew, do you want to jump in? I've got a bunch more questions.
No, go ahead. I know you have, I have a lot of questions too, but I'll let you go first.
Well, just one more. So one more, and then Andrew, you can jump in. So what's really interesting about NFTs is that as a creator of an NFT, you know, you can sell it, but if it goes up in value and it gets resold, you can earn like a royalty fee, right? And so the ability to use like a smart contract as a way to create a payment stream when value is owed to someone is really compelling. Now, in the context of what you're doing, let's say that I own, here's what I own. And full disclosure, both Andrew and I own one of these things. Didn't break the bank. It's just like something fun to do. This is an AX number 935, AX 935. So do you tell me what that is? And I'll tell you like what my thoughts are. First, what like, where do I fit into the universe currently?
Oh, you have an AX. Okay. So right now, you said you have a female AX, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
She's pretty cool. She's got purple shades, red hair. She's green, but she looks like she's got like it's like an exoskeleton, and underneath she's glowing. It's very cool.
The female AX are actually they're quite rare. So goodbye.
I know.
I'm like, that's a good. Oh yeah, she's wicked.
Yeah.
So she is, they're sort of part of almost the resistance, right? They're part of the collective. The AX are fighting for their freedom, first and foremost. They're sort of all trying to break free from the technology company that owns them or sells them as goods. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the storylines that a lot of the AX holders are taking and making it their own. It's very interesting to be an AX. Like as I've been writing the story, a lot of the things that I'm thinking about are, how do you create anarchy, right? It's like these things are so tied to the energy grid. What happens if the energy grid goes down, right? It's like with humans, there's resources that you can take away from humans. There's food, there's water. You can obviously, you need energy as well. But when you are artificial intelligence and you're plugged into some kind of network, it's a lot scarier, right? So that is one of the questions that I've posed recently to the AX community. What happens when your survival is based on something that like you have very little control of, right? And so I ask a lot of philosophical questions of the community when they're building out their characters. I try and have them really relate to their own lives as humans so that they can, and their own sense of experience. I don't know if this is what you were asking.
No, this is really helpful. Can I have a follow-up? So let's say that I write a backstory for AX 935 and also try to like square some of these philosophical questions. And it's like what I've done is good quality stuff. What is the process by which it would get integrated into what you'd call like canon, right? Like it's part of the cinematic universe. Are you deciding, Jesse, or what's the process?
So we have a creative guild of all people, of 10 people who came from the community who are very active early on in the storytelling process. Right. They are, they're all over the world. We have somebody from New York, we have somebody from India, we have somebody from England, we have a couple in Germany, and it's this really global collective of creatives, and they're the ones who are going through and reading everything and sending me things that really stand out to them. And it's like every 2 weeks we host different prompts, and I don't want to call them contests, but they kind of are, where you can like win new characters, and we bring attention to the winners on all of our socials. Right now, the canon as it stands, like we're still quite new. Yeah. One of the things that like we love to do is actually to put out like a yearly, these are the stories, this is how they interacted. One of the things that's pretty cool is our website right now almost works as like social media for your character. You know, when you're signing in, you're not signing in as Alex Tapscott, you're signing in as Uriax, who you should name, by the way. give her some life.
How do I name her?
If you go on to mv3.io and connect your wallet, you're able to access the hub, and the hub is where you can go in and name your character, stake your character, write stories for your character, see updates as they come. This is the first generation of the website, which will continue to be updated. That's like my brother's, Roberto, who's our third founder. That's really his area of expertise. He was he's a designer, and he founded, created, and sold a ton of mobile apps. And so this is his baby, is like this part of the process.
Right.
But yeah,
okay. So let's say, so we've got so I'm going to name her, I'm going to participate in a workshop and contribute the story. And then the guild is going to agree to sort of adopt it. And then let's say down the road, you know, this gets optioned by someone, or, you know, turned into a comic book, as you pointed out, or maybe it's some kind of interactive role-playing game or movie or whatever. As an owner, you know, I get to participate in that. I get to see my character maybe appear. And if the story was compelling enough, you know, she gets a speaking role or some, you know, important role in the story. Have you thought at all about what the economic relationship is for token holders who hold these things, and, you know, how they might participate should these things end up in a property that does well and makes money?
Yes. So they own the IP. You own your IP for your character. Whatever you do with that character is yours, right? So it would just be, it's a licensing model almost. If we were to use your character in our story, I mean, I think it's like you as the owner of it get to negotiate your deal and what that looks like. We do have like a grand plan for staking, which Torey, I'm going to let you speak on, because I feel like you describe it better than we do. And again, like Alex, you probably know way more about this than I do, but as we like try and figure out whether NFTs are going to be securities, or, you know, like there's a lot of legal issues that like I don't feel super, like that's why I'm like I don't feel super comfortable. I don't know how to speak to our future plans without making promises, but it's all stuff that we have thought about a lot. Torey, I don't know if you want to take over there.
Yeah, I mean, as we all know, it's a very gray area currently. But I think the clarification to make is, by holding one of these characters, our intent is yes, to expand, you know, what creativity can look like on the internet by creating for these characters and extending our universe, if you will, with your character. But that does not mean that you have to necessarily participate in order to participate in the upside of our sort of grand plan. Right. We're still figuring out with our legal team, you know, what can and can't be done, but that's the intention of the project is, you know, we have a few different verticals, right? We have ownership and the sort of Web3 component. We have the TV aspect of things that Jesse spoke about. And simultaneously, we're working on a mobile gaming vertical as well. And the intention is, you know, you don't necessarily have to co-create with your character to participate. The idea is that by owning one of these characters in the ecosystem, effectively, you know, you're a supporter of this IP and this media franchise. And as a result, you know, you should participate in some way in the upside of that IP.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think myself and Alex, we talk a lot about how community ownership is kind of the core superpower of everything in Web3. And it's kind of, at least for me personally, it's the thing that gets me the most excited. One thing I was curious about is sort of the Bored Ape Yacht Club. They started with an NFT collection, and then they launched their own sort of utility token the ape coin. And then now it looks like they've sort of launched multiple different NFTs. You got the Mutant Ape Yacht Club. And they've done something kind of interesting where they've tried to sort of tether the two together. So if you sell your NFT, you actually lose access to your ape coins, which is kind of interesting. Have you guys, I guess, thought about launching your own sort of utility token beyond the NFTs? And I guess I'm just curious about how you manage that, not necessarily conflict of interest between sort of the core company and the NFT holders, but there is sort of potentially divergent interests, I guess, in some ways. So I'm curious how you're thinking about that sort of long term.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something we've talked about a lot internally. I think for our purposes right now, what we're kind of interested in is the creative play of the IP, right? Like, where can our community take these characters? How can they extend that universe, and how can that sort of world of co-creation, capture the value of fan works? Alex, we talked about it a little bit, when we first started talking about this project, but fan works and fan fiction have been like a dirty little, side periphery aspect of a lot of IP franchises. And what we're hoping to do is really legitimize, the community's contribution. And so that's what MV3.io is sort of hoping to become, is a place where fan creations can be captured, and the community can sort of see and share and recognize each other. In terms of the token, we want that to be a functional part of that ecosystem. I think the last thing we want to do is just launch a token for token's sake kind of thing. And so as the sort of cultural ferment of our ecosystem begins to happen, and we're slowly building at MV3.io, we've allowed people to name and write backstories of their characters. As that grows, we've built the system, but we don't know exactly where it's going to go. And I think that's what's so exciting about it, is people will do things with their characters and take their stories into places that we couldn't have predicted, right? Which is something that we're really excited about. But we always want the token to be functional within that ecosystem. And so at this point, it's something that we've talked about, but for our purposes, we don't want it to overshadow what the sort of intention of the project has been currently.
I think
so
that's
down the
right.
road.
Yeah, I mean, I view MV3 as being part of a new crop of Web3 startups that is leading with the utility first before the speculation. So I think of Bored Ape Yacht Club as like, okay, there was a token, they launched, it was in the middle of a bull market, these things were being speculated on, going up and up and up. And then they backwards engineered a bunch of stuff to like justify the existence of these tokens, right? Oh, there's a story. Oh, it's a token gated community. Oh, 10 parts in New York at, NFT New York and all this stuff. Whereas I think of, and maybe it's a bear market and it's not like you can just do anything and raise money and that's that. You've got to have intention behind what you're doing. And so to me, the idea of starting with story and starting with a cinematic universe and being really deliberate in that thinking feels like a more sustainable strategy, because I do fundamentally believe that, especially outside of financial services applications, any kind of community ownership startup needs to begin with people wanting to be part of it without the ownership. Like, the ownership is definitely a powerful part of the user experience, but it needs to be only one part of the user experience. People, like, I think you'll have lots of people who buy one of these NFTs because they want the bragging rights if it ever appears in a comic book, to say, look, there's my character. And that in and of itself is enough just to feel like they're part of the community. And I think that is really interesting, but it's not because they're trying to, flip NFTs or trying to earn some utility token that they get from owning NFTs. All that stuff, if it may be useful down the road to have, an economy inside of this story or whatever. But for now, focus on, building something that people want. And I think of the fan fiction example as being really indicative of that. Like people just contributed and still do tons of fan fiction, right? On all sorts of different, they want to take their character, they love these characters, they take them in different directions, they write what they wish they had happened, they write, news stories and so forth. They're not doing it because they're looking to earn, fanfic coin. They're doing it because they love the stories. And if by helping to bootstrap a platform for sharing fan fiction, they end up getting to be a community owner as well, then that's a bonus, but it's not the raison d'etre for doing it in the first place. And I think that strategy is how, to the 7% question of, what's people's positive or negative view of crypto, that's how you get them over the line. I think of a lot of the NFT projects from the boom times, of 2021, as basically just being like ways to raise money from selling tokens without ever delivering a product on the back end. And this feels like a more sustainable model. So just thought I'd say that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it kind of financializes something. It financializes our ecosystem to a degree that we don't feel it needs to be financialized at the current point. When it comes to rewarding and stuff like that, it's something that we're definitely going to consider. But for the time being, every choice that we make is about continued scaling and developing sort of multiple entry points for new fans to discover the franchise, not the token or the financial aspects of things as the primary sort of driver,
Yeah. Well, listen, guys, it's been great to chat. We could keep going here. We usually try to keep it to 35 or 40 minutes. So where can people find out more about what you guys are up to?
Definitely
Jesse?
check out our website, www.mv3.io. You can also check out our Twitter and our Instagram. You'll find all of those socials linked to the website. And jump into our Discord. We are literally always around to answer questions.
Terrific. Jesse and Torey, thanks so much for your time. See you in the metaverse. That's it for DeFi Decoded, and or see you in a Luna City. Can't wait to spend some time there with my character, who I will name. I'm already thinking of some good names for her. All right, until next time, that's it for this week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
See ya.
The information contained herein does not constitute an offer or solicitation by anyone in the United States or in any other jurisdiction in which such an offer or solicitation is not authorized, or to any person to whom it is unlawful to make such an offer or solicitation. Prospective investors who are not residents in Canada should contact their financial advisor to determine whether securities of the funds may be lawfully sold in their jurisdiction.